Hello, everyone. Today I bring you a breathtaking story, the struggle of a man alongside a wild wolf to save his wife and protect the forest from hunters. In The Guardian of the Forest, you will experience an incredible journey of courage, loyalty, and nature. If you enjoy inspiring stories and action-packed adventures, make sure to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our exciting stories. Comment where you're watching from and share with anyone who loves a good adventure. Mike was walking through the dense redwood forest, surrounded by the gentle sound of leaves in the wind and the singing of birds. Sunlight filtered through the treetops, creating a play of light and shadows that danced around him. He took a deep breath, feeling the fresh scent of wet earth and vegetation. The forest had always been his refuge, a place where he could connect with nature and forget the worries of everyday life. While exploring, a strange sound caught his attention. It was the noise of rushing water, something that didn't fit the natural symphony of the place. Curiously, Mike headed toward Crescent Lake, his heart racing with the anticipation of discovering what was happening. As he approached the shore, he spotted a distressing scene. A wolf caught in the current was struggling desperately to stay afloat. "Damn, what happened to you?" Mike murmured as his protective instinct kicked in. Without thinking twice, he plunged into the cold water. The current was strong, pulling him away, but he pushed himself, swimming with all his strength toward the wolf. "Easy, buddy. I'm here," he shouted, trying to calm the animal as he got closer. The wolf, frightened and injured, bared its teeth in a defensive instinct, but Mike knew he needed to earn its trust. He finally reached the wolf, grabbing it by the scruff and pulling with all his might toward the shore. The effort was exhausting, but the determination to save that creature kept him steady. With one last push, he managed to drag the wolf out of the water. Tired but relieved, Mike sat on the damp grass and looked at the wolf, which was now lying beside him, panting. "Are you okay, partner?" He assessed the wounds on the animal's body, noticing cuts and scratches that seemed to have been caused by a trap. "We need to take care of this." With a bit of effort, Mike improvised a bandage using strips from his shirt. He gently applied the compress to the wolf's wounds, which watched him with a curious gaze. "I'll call you Blaze. You're strong, and that reddish coat gives you an indomitable spirit," he said, smiling. The wolf didn't seem so threatening anymore. On the contrary, a connection began to form between them. After finishing the first aid, Mike leaned back on the grass, still panting. "You and I, Blaze, are now a team." He looked into the wolf's eyes and felt that there was something special about that creature. "Let's get out of here and find a safe place for you to recover." Blaze, and seemingly recognizing the kindness in Mike, gave a slight nod, as if agreeing. With a new friend by his side, Mike got up and slowly began walking toward the trail that led home. The wolf, still a bit dazed, followed closely, taking hesitant but determined steps. As they walked, Mike talked about his life, about his wife Sarah, and his love for the forest. "She always said that every living being has a purpose, and I believe you're here for a reason, Blaze." The wolf, as if understanding, stopped for a moment and looked at Mike with an intensity that made his heart race. "Let's discover what that purpose is together." The forest around them seemed more alive than ever, as if embracing that new friendship. Mike felt that this unexpected encounter would change not only his life, but also Blaze's, and perhaps even Sarah's. Fate had united them in a way he could never have imagined, and the journey ahead would be filled with challenges and revelations that would test the strength of their new bond. Mike felt a heavy heart as he walked through the familiar trails of the redwood forest. The sun was setting, and golden light filtered through the treetops, creating a spectacle of dancing shadows on the leaf-covered ground. However, the beauty of the moment was abruptly overshadowed by the image of his house in disarray, as if a hurricane had swept through. As he crossed the threshold of his property, a chill ran down his spine. The front door was wide open, and the furniture was overturned. "Sarah!" he shouted, his voice echoing in the emptiness. The silence that followed was deafening, and anguish surged like a wave within him. Mike crouched down to examine the ground and saw heavy boot prints, evidence that someone had broken in. Next to the living room table, a torn piece of paper caught his attention. He approached and read the threatening message. "If you want to see your wife again, stop protecting the forest. We know who you are and what you do." Anger and despair intertwined in his chest. He couldn't believe that those hunters, who had always been lurking, had finally crossed the line. No, 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 this can't be happening, he murmured to himself, the thought of losing Sarah consuming him. Mike's phone vibrated in his pocket, interrupting his lament. He hurried to answer, recognizing the voice on the other end of the line. It was Tom, his childhood friend who had become a police officer in the area. "Mike, are you okay?" Tom asked, concern evident in his voice. "I'm not okay, Tom. Sarah has been kidnapped." They left a message. "They want her to stop the preservation work." Mike's voice trembled, and he struggled to maintain his composure. "I'll help you find her, but you need to be careful. The hunters have allies in high places. I can't guarantee that the police will act quickly," Tom warned, hesitating. "I can't wait. I need you by my side, Tom. They won't stop until the forest is destroyed, and Sarah is too," Mike pleaded, determination growing inside him. "All right, I'll do what I can. Let's meet on the trail that leads to the lake. They might have left clues," Tom agreed, urgency in his voice. After hanging up, Mike looked at Blaze, who was watching everything with expressive eyes. "We'll find her, buddy. No matter what happens, I won't let these men destroy what Sarah loves," he said, stroking the wolf's fur, which seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. On a whim, he picked up Duke Mar, his loyal family dog, who was on one of the beds outside and also seemed to sense that something was wrong. Duke got up, wagging his tail, ready to follow Mike on any adventure. "Let's go, Duke. We have to find Sarah before it's too late," Mike said, his eyes filled with determination. The three set off toward the trail, the forest breeze brushing against their faces, but Mike's worry was palpable. Every step they took seemed to echo in his mind, and he knew time was running out. He wouldn't allow himself to fail. The connection he felt with the forest and with Sarah was stronger than any threat. He vowed to himself that he would do whatever it took to rescue her and protect the home they both loved. The redwood forest was an impenetrable place, filled with shadows and mysteries. Mike, Blaze, and Duke moved through the tall, majestic trees, whose sturdy trunks seemed to tell stories of ages past. The sun filtered softly through the leaves, creating a mosaic of light and shadow dancing around them. Mike's breathing was heavy, not only from the physical exertion but from the worry that consumed him. The image of Sarah tied up and scared somewhere deep in the forest propelled him forward, even when his strength seemed to wane. "Come on, Blaze," Mike encouraged, feeling the energy of the wolf by his side. Blaze, with his reddish fur shining under the sunlight, looked at Mike with intelligent eyes, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. Duke, the loyal family dog, ran ahead, his sharp instincts detecting any signs of danger. The dog's paws moved quickly as he sniffed the ground, searching for clues that could lead to the hunter's hideout. "Do you feel it too, Duke?" Mike asked, looking at the dog, who stopped abruptly with his ears perked up. Duke's gaze was fixed on a point ahead, and Mike immediately felt a wave of hope. "Let's go. It could be a clue." The three continued to move forward, passing through thorny bushes and fallen trunks. Every step they took seemed to resonate with the determination to rescue Sarah. After a few minutes, they reached a small clearing where they found a group of animals trapped in snares. The scene made Mike's heart tighten. Their innocent souls were captured, and the pain in their eyes reflected the cruelty of the hunters. "We can't let this happen," Mike exclaimed as he crouched down to examine one of the traps. "We need to free them." Blaze growled softly, as if agreeing with Mike's decision. Duke, always alert, began to investigate the traps while Mike worked quickly to disable them. "Easy, everyone. We're here to help," he murmured to the animals, trying to calm them. With a swift and precise movement, he managed to open the traps and free a small deer, which, once free, looked at Mike with gratitude before disappearing into the forest. "This is just the beginning," Mike said to Blaze and Duke as he stood up and looked around. "We need to keep going and find Sarah. This can't be the end." However, as they walked, Mike couldn't shake the thoughts about Sarah. The memory of her passion for nature and the determination with which she fought for the conservation of the forest warmed his heart, but at the same time, the anguish of not knowing what was happening to her tormented him. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, trying to focus. "Sarah, where are you?" he whispered to himself, hoping that his voice could reach his wife. "I will find you. I promise." Blaze, sensing Mike's sadness, approached and rubbed his body against the man's leg. Mike lowered his head and petted the wolf's fur. "Thank you, buddy. You're more than just an animal. You're my family now." With renewed focus, Mike stood up and began walking again. "Let's go, Blaze. We can't stop until we find her. The forest and all its inhabitants need us." As they walked, the shadows of the forest seemed to deepen, but Mike and his companions' determination only grew. Every step they took was a step closer to Sarah, and the bond he had formed with Blaze had become a source of strength. He looked up at the sky, where the first signs of a sunset began to appear, and a spark of hope ignited within him. "We're going to make it," he said aloud, as if to convince not only himself but also Blaze and Duke. "We will save Sarah and protect our home." Mike moved along the leaf-covered trail, the majestic redwood trees rising around him like silent sentinels guarding secrets and ancient stories. Despite the beauty of the place, his heart was heavy. The urgency to rescue Sarah pulsed through his veins, and the presence of Blaze by his side, still a bit shaky from the effort of the rescue, was the only thing that kept him focused. When he spotted a small wooden shelter by the roadside, a mix of hope and anxiety took over him. There, in the past, he had spent many afternoons with Tom, his childhood friend. The scent of pine and wet earth took him back to carefree moments, but the reality of now was grim. He needed information, and Tom might be the key. As he entered the shelter, Mike found Tom sitting at a table, head down, staring at a cold cup of coffee beside him. The officer looked up, and upon recognizing Mike, his expression shifted from surprise to concern. "Mike, what are you doing here?" Tom exclaimed, quickly standing up. "I heard about Sarah. I'm so sorry, man. This is horrible." "I need your help, Tom. The hunters have kidnapped her, and the only way to save her is to find out where they're keeping her. I know you have contacts. Can you help me?" Mike pleaded, his voice heavy with desperation. Tom hesitated, his gaze drifting. "I'd love to help, but you know how things are around here. The hunters have influence, and many in the police force are compromised. I don't want to get involved more than I already am. We can't let fear stop us from doing the right thing. Sarah is fighting for the preservation of this forest, and they want to destroy it. You can't stay silent while this is happening," Mike said, his voice rising in frustration. Tom took a deep breath, clearly torn between loyalty to his friend and fear of the consequences. "I know that, and you're right. But I need to think. It could be dangerous for you and for me." Silence hung between them, heavy with memories. Mike remembered the adventures they had together as kids, exploring those same forests, dreaming of becoming guardians of nature. Now, everything felt so distant. "Do you remember what we used to say?" Mike asked, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. "Nature doesn't belong to anyone but to all of us. We need to fight for that, Tom. I need you to trust me." After a few moments that felt like an eternity, Tom finally relented. "All right, I'll help." He grabbed a notebook and started jotting down notes. "Listen, I got some information about a suspicious camp in the forest. It's where the hunters usually gather. They have a hideout deep within, but it's risky. You need to be careful." "Where exactly is it?" Mike asked, anxious. "Near Lost Lake. But be aware, the authorities aren't on your side. I can give you a map, but I can't get more involved than that. If anyone finds out I helped, my career could be at risk." "I understand. Don't worry, Tom. I just need the information. I'll do this for Sarah and for everyone who loves this forest." Tom looked into Mike's eyes, realizing the determination radiating from him. "You're willing to risk everything, aren't you?" he murmured, admiring his friend's courage. "I have no choice. We have to do this." Mike replied, with conviction. "Sarah deserves this, and so does the forest." With a nod, Tom handed over the map, and before Mike left, he added, "Stay safe, my friend. And please, come back to tell me you succeeded. I can't let more people suffer because of those hunters." Mike looked back, feeling the strength of the friendship that bound them. "I promise, Tom. I'll do whatever it takes." And with that, he grabbed Blaze and set off towards the forest, determined to rescue his wife and fight against those who threatened not only his family, but also the nature they loved so much. The redwood forest enveloped Mike and his companions in a cloak of shadows and mystery. The smell of damp earth and the symphony of leaves rustling in the breeze created an almost magical atmosphere. But for Mike, that place now pulsed with the urgency of his mission. After days of searching and danger, they had finally found the hunters' hideout, a camp disguised among the dense, impenetrable trees. With his heart racing, Mike slipped through the shadows, his sweaty hands gripping the knife he always carried. Beside him, Sarah and Tom followed with the same determination, their eyes fixed on the camp ahead. The sound of laughter and harsh conversations from the hunters echoed, punctuating the tension in the air. "We need to be quick," Tom whispered, his voice low but firm. "If they catch us here, it'll be a disaster." "I just want to find Sarah," Mike murmured, worry etched on his face. The memory of his wife tied up somewhere in the camp consumed him, but the strength he felt from Blaze and Duke by his side kept him focused. With a signal, Mike indicated that they would approach the camp. Each step was measured, each movement carefully planned. When they reached the edge of the camp, the sight that presented itself was desolate. Makeshift tents were scattered, and in one of them, Mike saw something that made his heart stop. Sarah, tied to a chair, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "Sarah," Mike whispered, unable to contain his emotions. He turned to Tom and said, "It's her. I'm going to rescue her." "Wait," Tom replied, holding Mike's arm. "We need a plan. If you expose yourself now, they'll notice." "I can't leave her like that," Mike insisted, his eyes locked on his wife. In a surge of impulse, he began to move, but Tom stopped him again. "Trust me. We'll distract them. Duke and I will make noise on the other side of the camp. You'll have a chance." Mike hesitated, but Tom's determination convinced him. "All right," he said, his words heavy with anxiety. "Be quick." Tom nodded and, along with Duke, moved away while Mike crept closer to the tent where Sarah was. He could hear the hunters' conversation, laughing and bragging about their actions. Anger boiled inside him as he approached the tent. "Please don't hurt me." Sarah's voice reached him, filled with fear but with a strength that made Mike's heart race. He squeezed between the shadows, trying to find the best way to free her. "I'm here, Sarah," he whispered, just for her to hear. "I'm going to get you out of here." She turned her head quickly, her eyes shining when she saw him. "Mike, you came. Be careful. They're armed." Mike looked around, searching for a way to get into the tent. Hearing footsteps approaching, he quickly hid behind a tree, his mind racing a mile a minute. He needed to be smart. Sarah's life was at stake. "I'm not going to let them hurt you," he promised, his voice heavy with emotion. "We're going to get out of here together." He saw Tom and Duke in action, making noise and drawing the hunters' attention away from the tent. It was the moment. Mike moved quickly, sliding into the tent. The smell of dirt and smoke was intense, but he ignored it all, focusing only on Sarah. With trembling hands, he approached her. "I'm going to free you now," he said, pulling out the knife from his waist. The look in her eyes, a mix of relief and concern, made his determination grow. "Hurry, Mike. They'll be back any moment," Sarah exclaimed, her voice low but hurried. With a swift motion, he began cutting the ropes that bound her. "We're almost there," he encouraged, while his mind raced for a plan to escape. Finally, the ropes broke, and Sarah stood up, her eyes filled with gratitude and love. "Thank you, love," she said, wrapping her arms around him. "I knew you would come." "Let's go. We have to get out of here," Mike replied, pulling her towards the exit. His heart was pounding not only from adrenaline but from the certainty that they still had much to fight for. Mike, Sarah, Duke, and Blaze gathered in a safe place, out of sight from the hunters, to devise a plan that could rescue not only Sarah, but all the captured animals. The surroundings were quiet, except for the soft sound of leaves whispering in the wind. The moonlight filtered through the treetops, illuminating Mike's determined face. "We need to be quick and discreet," Mike began, looking into Sarah's eyes. "If they realize we're here, everything will be lost. Do you have any idea how we can get into the camp?" Sarah, still with her eyes full of determination, replied, "I managed to hear some things while I was trapped. They have a guard at each entrance, but there's a blind spot at the back of the camp. If we go that way, we can avoid most of the traps." Duke, the loyal family dog, crouched next to Mike, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. Blaze, with his alert and agile gaze, seemed ready to act. Tom, who had been listening attentively, interjected, What if we create a distraction? That might buy you enough time to get in and rescue the animals. I can use my position as a police officer to alert some friendly officers. They can help divert attention." "Great idea, Tom," Sarah exclaimed, her face lighting up. "But we need to make sure you don't get caught. If the hunters know you're on our side, it could complicate everything." "Leave that to me," Tom replied, with a confident smile. "I know how to handle them. Besides, I can make it look like I'm just patrolling the area. That will give them the illusion that they're safe." With the plan outlined, Mike looked at Blaze and said, "You will be the key to this. Your agility and instinct will help us get in and out unnoticed. Are you ready?" The wolf responded with a low growl, as if affirming that he was ready for the mission. "Then let's get ready," Mike said as everyone moved to equip themselves. Sarah and Mike grabbed some ropes and improvised tools that could be useful. Tom, in turn, moved away to ensure his distractions were prepared. As they got ready, Mike felt a knot in his stomach. "Sarah, I don't want anything to happen to you again. I feel so helpless sometimes." She stepped closer to him, placing her hand on his shoulder. "We're going to make it, Mike. We're in this together, and we have Blaze and Duke by our side. The forest needs us, and we can't let those hunters win." With her encouraging words, Mike felt his determination grow. He looked at Blaze and said, "Let's end this, for everything we love." Finally, the group was ready. With one last look, Mike whispered, "Let's go." They moved toward the camp, silently weaving through the trees, using the darkness of the night as their cloak. As they got close to the location, they smelled smoke and heard the sound of laughter coming from the camp. Mike gestured for everyone to stop and observe. "Look," he said, pointing a finger at the main entrance, where two hunters were chatting casually. "We need to go around back," Sarah whispered. "That's our way in." Carefully, they veered off the main path, moving cautiously to the blind spot Sarah had mentioned. When they reached the spot, Mike turned to Blaze. "Are you ready to do your part? We need you to go in and see what's happening in there." The wolf nodded, his instincts sharp and his agility ready for action. "As soon as you have an idea of how many are inside, come back and let us know," Mike instructed, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Blaze quickly moved away, disappearing into the darkness. Silence settled as they waited for his return, and the tension in the atmosphere was palpable. Tom broke the silence, saying they hoped he could return unnoticed, while everyone kept their eyes fixed on the camp. The wait felt endless, but finally, Blaze appeared again, his gaze intense and determined. He gestured, indicating that there was a considerable number of hunters, but there was also an opportunity. Mike felt a mix of relief and anxiety. "It was time to act," he said firmly. They prepared for what was to come, ready to face whatever awaited them. The redwood forest was shrouded in a haunting twilight, lit only by the glow of the full moon filtering through the tree canopies. The tension in the air was palpable as Mike moved silently toward the hunters' camp. His heart raced in his chest, and he could feel the adrenaline pulsing through his veins. Beside him, Blaze, the wolf he had rescued, was on guard, his sharpened instincts alerting him to any movement around. Duke, the loyal family dog, followed closely, his eyes attentive and focused. Mike whispered urgently to Blaze that they needed to be quick as they stealthily maneuvered between the tree trunks. If they realized they were there, it would be the end. Blaze looked at Mike as if he understood the urgency of their mission. The wolf had not only become a friend, but also an invaluable partner in this journey. The connection between them was undeniable, and Mike felt that Blaze was determined to protect not only himself but also his new family. As they approached the camp, Mike spotted a crackling campfire in the distance, where some shadows were moving. He suddenly halted and crouched down, trying to assess the situation. "Duke, stay here and keep quiet," he ordered as he cautiously advanced. The firelight illuminated the hunters' faces, revealing cruel smiles and threatening glances. Mike thought to himself that he couldn't let them hurt Blaze, remembering the wolf's bravery in facing the turbulent waters of Crescent Lake. But as he looked at the camp, he realized the situation was more dire than he had imagined. Hank, the leader of the hunters, was there, a triumphant look on his face as he spoke about his evil plans. "With that woman out of the way, we can finally destroy this forest and profit from selling the timber," Hank said, laughing. The other hunters applauded, but Mike felt a fire of rage growing inside him. "I can't let this happen," he murmured to himself. Suddenly, Hank shouted, "Bring the wolf. We'll use him as bait to lure the husband. He won't be able to resist such a powerful call." Mike's heart stopped for a moment. He knew Blaze was in danger. "No, I can't let this happen." He needed to act. Taking a deep breath, he decided that the only way to save Blaze and Sarah was to infiltrate the camp. With a determined look, he turned to Blaze and said that he would go in and save him, asking him to trust him. The wolf looked back, his eyes shining with understanding and loyalty. Mike stealthily moved toward the camp, his senses on high alert. He slipped behind some crates and managed to reach the edge of the campfire. At that moment, Hank was holding Blaze by the collar, the wolf baring his teeth in a mixture of fear and determination. "Mike, what are you doing here?" Hank shouted, his voice cutting through the night like a knife. "You shouldn't have come. I won't let you hurt Blaze or Sarah," Mike replied, his voice firm and full of courage. Chaos erupted in the camp as the hunters began to move in his direction. "Do you really think you can face us alone?" Hank laughed, but there was a shadow of concern in his eyes. Mike's fearless presence made the hunters hesitate for a moment. He moved closer, his muscles tense and ready for battle. "If you want to hurt Blaze, you'll have to get through me first," he challenged, feeling the strength of determination grow within him. With a quick motion, Hank pulled out a knife, his intentions clear. "Then let's see what you're capable of, Mike. Let's see if you really care about that wolf." Mike's heart raced, and he knew the fight was about to begin. Adrenaline enveloped him as he prepared to face not only Hank, but all the evil threatening the forest and those he loved. He thought of Sarah, of Blaze, of everything he was fighting for. "I won't give up," he shouted, charging forward with renewed purpose. The redwood forest was engulfed in a tense and dark atmosphere as Mike, Sarah, Blaze, and Duke prepared to confront the hunters. The air was thick with the smell of damp leaves and the distant beat of a racing heart. Mike felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins, and the determination in his eyes reflected his unwavering will to protect not only his wife, but also the forest he loved so much. In the darkness of the camp, the hunters moved confidently, unaware that a storm was approaching. "Let's do this once and for all," Sarah whispered, squeezing Mike's hand. "They can't keep destroying what's ours." Her voice was firm, but there was a shadow of fear that Mike couldn't ignore. "Yes, let's—" "We need to be quick and precise," Mike replied, looking at Blaze, who was beside him, eyes focused and breathing steady. "Blaze, are you ready?" The wolf let out a low growl, as if saying he was more than ready for battle. With a nod of his head, Tom and Duke began to create distractions around the camp, making noise and moving stealthily among the shadows. The tension was palpable, and Mike felt his heart race as he started to move toward the center of the camp. "Now!" shouted Tom, banging a pot and drawing the hunters. "Attention!" The clang echoed through the forest, and the men began to move, ready to investigate what was happening. It was the moment Mike had been waiting for, and he moved with agility. He slipped between the trees, the darkness serving as his ally. As he approached the cage where the animals were imprisoned, he saw Blaze, who, with his sharp instincts, was already preparing to attack. "Easy, Blaze. Let's free them first," Mike whispered. The hunters, distracted by the commotion, did not notice the group's approach. Mike crouched down and began to work on the lock of the cage. "Come on, Sarah, help me here," he said, with a determined look. Sarah came closer, and together they managed to open the cage, freeing a group of frightened animals. "Quick, let's go before they notice," Tom shouted, and at that moment, Hank, the leader of the hunters, appeared, blocking the exit with a wicked grin. "You thought you could escape, Mike? This is just the beginning." His voice was full of contempt, and Mike felt the anger swell inside him. "I'm not going to let you destroy the forest, Hank," Mike replied, moving forward with Blaze by his side. The tension escalated as Hank pulled out a gun, aiming it directly at Mike. "You don't understand who you're dealing with. I'm not just a hunter. I'm what you would call a businessman." "You're nothing but a criminal," Sarah shouted, her voice trembling with indignation. "And we're not going to let you continue." At that moment, Blaze, sensing the danger, lunged at Hank, biting his leg and causing him to lose his balance. The battle unfolded quickly. Mike did not hesitate to attack, using the strength and skill he had acquired throughout his life. Hank, surprised, tried to regain his composure, but it was too late. With a shout of determination, Mike launched himself at Hank, while Blaze moved with agility, attacking the man with precision. The fight was intense, and each blow exchanged carried not only physical strength, but also the emotional weight Mike felt for the forest and for Sarah. "You won't win," Mike shouted, as he finally managed to disarm Hank, throwing the gun away. The battle was tipping in his favor, and Blaze's presence by his side strengthened him. "This forest is ours. You won't destroy it." Hank, now surrounded, began to realize that his advantage was fading. "This isn't over, Mike. You may have won today, but I will be back," he shouted, trying to back away. "Not if you're captured," said Tom, who joined the fight, holding Hank while Mike and Blaze prepared for the final action. The strength of their unity was undeniable, and Mike's determination echoed through the forest. With the hunters finally subdued, Mike, Sarah, Blaze, and Duke came together, ready to carry the fight forward. The battle for the forest was far from over, but at that moment, victory was within reach. After the hunters' arrest, Redwood Forest finally breathed a sigh of relief. Mike and Sarah met Tom at a small cafe located at the park entrance. The sunlight filtered through the tree leaves, creating a serene atmosphere that contrasted with the turmoil of the past few days. "I can't believe we did it," Mike said, looking out the window at the trees swaying gently in the wind. "It was quite a fight, but we managed to protect our home." Sarah smiled, but her eyes still reflected the tension she had experienced. "And we still have a long way to go. We need to ensure that this never happens again. The forest needs defenders, not just from us, but from the entire community." Tom, who was sitting at the next table, overheard the conversation and, after a moment of hesitation, intervened. "I didn't realize how deep the corruption we were facing was. When you talked about the importance of preserving the forest, I didn't see the gravity of it. Now I understand. It's easy to ignore until something impacts your life so directly," Sarah replied, and with an understanding look. "But you can make a difference, Tom. Your position as a police officer can be a great support in this fight." He nodded, thoughtful. "I know there are others like Hank, and they won't give up easily. But this time, I will stand on the right side. Together, we can educate people, show them what's really at stake." Mike, now more enthusiastic, suggested, "We could organize talks at schools, hold community events. We need to engage people, show the importance of preservation and how it impacts their lives." "And this could start with Blaze's story," Sarah added, looking at the wolf who was relaxing in a corner of the cafe, watching everything with his bright eyes. "He is a symbol of resilience. If we can show how each of us can make a difference, maybe we can unite more people to the cause." The idea began to take shape in everyone's minds, and soon they were debating how they could create an awareness campaign. "We can use social media, create a website, something that engages young people. Their future is in the forest," Tom suggested, excited, "and we can include success stories like ours." "Show that it's possible to fight and win," Mike said, with a sparkle in his eyes. As the conversation flowed, the connection between them grew stronger. Each one, in their own struggle, had found a greater purpose, and together they were ready to face whatever came next. A few days later, Mike and Sarah decided that the first action would be a community walk through the forest. It would be an opportunity for people to witness the beauty of the place they were defending. "Oh, let's call all the neighbors. I want them to see the forest the way I see it," Mike said with a hopeful smile. The walk took place on a sunny, clear day. Families gathered, children ran around, and adults exchanged stories. Sarah, next to Mike, spoke about the importance of conservation, while Tom kept an eye on the group's safety. Blaze, now more confident, accompanied everyone like a true guardian of the forest. "Look here. This is what we are fighting to protect." Sarah pointed to a centuries-old tree, its leaves shining in the sunlight. "This forest is not just a place. It's a habitat, a home for many living beings. Every tree, every animal has its value." The community listened attentively, and Mike felt the weight of what they had achieved. "And each of you can be part of this. Small actions, like not littering or respecting the trails, help preserve our home." At the end of the walk, everyone gathered in an open area where Mike and Sarah made a call to action. "Let's unite to protect this forest. Together, we can make a difference," Mike said, his voice resonating among the participants. With the community's support, Mike and Sarah were ready to become tireless defenders of the redwood forest, ensuring that its beauty and vitality would be preserved for future generations. The wolf blaze, by their side, symbolized this new era of resistance, a guardian who would protect not only the forest, but also all those who loved it. Hank was determined not to spend the rest of his life behind bars. His heart raced as he looked at the cold-bound dark prison cell, planning his escape. He had underestimated Mike and Sarah's determination, but now, with a new plan in mind, he was sure he could escape and take revenge. On a quiet night, he approached the bars of the cell when suddenly, a sound interrupted his thoughts. The heavy footsteps of a guard approached. Tom, Mike's childhood friend who was now acting as a police officer, walked up to Hank's cell, his expression serious. "Do you think you can just walk out like that, Hank? Do you think the corruption you've caused will let you go unpunished?" He leaned forward, staring at the man who had caused so much suffering. "Tom, you don't understand," Hank said, trying to keep his voice calm. "You don't know what's at stake here. This forest, the wealth it brings. You can't let it be wasted by those environmentalists." "Environmentalists? They are the defenders of what's right. And you, a criminal who destroys nature for greed," Tom replied, his voice rising in intensity. "If you think you're going to escape, you're very mistaken. I'm here to ensure you pay for everything you've done." Hank laughed, a dark, scornful laugh. "Do you really think I'm the only problem? There are many others who think like me. If I fall, others will rise." Tom did not back down, his determination solidifying. "If you have accomplices, I'll find them, and when I do, there will be no place for you or them." He turned to walk away, but before he left, Hank shouted, "You're going to regret it. The forest won't be saved." With his heart racing, Tom left the cell and headed to the police station. He couldn't allow Hank and his network of hunters to escape justice. What he had seen in the forest, the atrocities committed, could not be ignored. Upon arriving at the station, he found Mike and Sarah discussing strategies to protect the forest. "Tom, are you okay?" Sarah asked, concerned about the expression on her friend's face. "I've been talking to Hank. He's more dangerous than ever and not alone. He mentioned accomplices," Tom replied, his serious tone causing the others to fall silent. "We need to act fast." "Then let's mobilize the community," Mike suggested, already thinking about the actions that could be taken. "We need to join forces with everyone who believes in protecting the forest. We can't let Hank and his friends continue to do what they want." Sarah agreed, her determination evident. "Let's meet with local groups, organize a protest. We need to show that we are stronger together." In the days that followed, the community mobilization was intense. Support began to grow like a wildfire in the forest. Posters were made, meetings were organized, and the message of forest protection spread rapidly. When the day of the protest arrived, a crowd gathered in front of the police station, holding banners and chanting slogans for the protection of nature. "Save the forest," the crowd echoed, the energy vibrant and full of hope. Meanwhile, Hank, in his cell, watched the news on television. The images of the protest irritated him. "These idiots don't understand. The forest is just the beginning," he muttered to himself, frustration consuming him. But Mike, Sarah, and Tom were not just fighting against Hank. They were fighting for a better future, and the community's determination was beginning to bear fruit. With the support of the police and the community, they managed to gather evidence against Hank and his accomplices, and a capture operation was organized. When Hank learned of the operation, he was in shock. "What are they doing? This can't be," he shouted, but it was too late. The authorities surrounded the location and arrested Hank's accomplices, ensuring that the redwood forest was safe. With Hank finally behind bars again, Mike, Sarah, and Tom gathered to celebrate this victory. "We did it," Mike said, a relieved smile on his face. "Yes, but the fight isn't over," Sarah added, looking at the forest they loved so much. "We need to keep educating and protecting our home." Tom, now more convinced than ever, agreed. "We are in this together. The forest needs us." And so, Mike, Sarah, and Tom not only became advocates for the forest but also inspired an entire community to fight for a greener and more sustainable future. ensuring that the beauty of the redwood forest would not be forgotten and would continue to thrive for future generations. Now I want to hear from you. What was the most exciting moment of this story? Leave your comment and share your thoughts with us. Your opinion is very important and helps us bring more inspiring stories. If you know someone who would also love this adventure, share the video with them. Let's spread stories of courage and love for nature together. And if you want to follow more exciting narratives like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next adventures. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.